All right, sorry about that. Can everybody hear me?
We can. It sounds like you're in a box, but we can hear you.
Yeah.
I know I brought my mic and my mixer, but it doesn't seem to be picking me up.
But we can hear you, okay?
All right, good.
Nice to
All
see you,
right,
Tom.
good turnout
Thanks,
tonight.
Freddie.
Yeah, they've all come to see a dead man walking. Haven't seen one for a while. So I suppose this is the afterlife. I've heard about it, but
Second
I thought
chance.
it was going to be a lot, a lot more clouds and people in white clothes than there are. But still,
It's more like
just-
dead man talking, isn't it?
I just picture you skiing down the mountain, Freddie.
yeah,
No, it's good you're here.
yeah. Thanks.
We did, those of us that showed up last week, was it only last week? We did a special session for you, and I'm convinced that's what did it, Freddie.
I'm totally convinced it's what did it as well. Honestly, within 12 hours of dying, I was better than I've been for years. It was kind of strange. It was like, did I dream that? Because I was, there was a lot of kind of sick people in that ward I was in, and they must have thought I was faking it. Because, I was dancing and, all that kind of limbo dancing, all kinds of stuff.
We all
Like somersault
shared,
flips.
we all shared the
moonwalking.
same vision of you as completely healed and walking around and making jokes in the hospital, and so
Yeah,
think
I mean,
it might help.
I did stick one of these doctors to the floor just for fun. So
Yeah.
it was all right. Yeah. Anyway, I do appreciate all of the love and the healing energy you've all sent. I'm sure, and I have no doubt that that's been a big factor in me being here and being feeling as good as I feel, to be honest. So yeah, thanks.
Good. Well, I think we're ready to get rolling here. Yeah, all right. So Freddie and I talked a little bit. We went back and forth on some topics and ended up deciding to do the virtues call tonight. So that's what I mentioned last week, was to share this topic of virtues and the power of virtues. And we're going to get into that tonight. And this is my favorite topic, probably the most important thing that I've never taught to a group of people yet. So you're the first group that's ever going to hear this. This was a year or two ago. I had about 3 hours in one afternoon where I downloaded, whatever you want to call it, downloading an inspiration. This kind of flowed to me, and I wrote as fast as I could for about 3 hours. And then I had about an hour and a half the next day as well on the power of virtues. And it really changed my perspective on life, on relationships, on growth, really on everything. And so I want to give you that today as this massive perspective shift on what's important, why things happen to you the way they do, what it actually means to grow and develop ourselves, and then how to install virtues. We're going to talk about how virtues apply to leadership, how they apply to success. Yeah, I'm super excited about it. So do me a favor, leave a comment in the comments about when I say virtues, what do you think of? Like, what are the virtues that you think of? What comes to mind? When you think of a virtuous person, what do you think of? I'll pull up these chats here. Powerful, altruism, honesty, integrity. Yeah, we're gonna go over all of these today. Good. Qualities that benefit others and myself. Yes, absolutely. Kindness, love, honesty, personal integrity. Beautiful. So I think all of our setbacks in life are for one reason, and that's to develop virtues. And we'll get into that. We're going to get into, I'm sure all of you are familiar with how to tell stories, like the structure of stories, what makes good, compelling novels and books, and why virtues are always at the core of that. But first, I'm going to read you two sections of a book. One is from Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, and he speaks of this character Maximus, who seems to be the inspiration for the movie Gladiator. So I'm going to read this, And I want you to, in the comments as we go, when you hear a virtue that stands out to you, just leave a comment. And I really want you to like meditate on this. Meditate on who this person is, how they carry themselves, and how they interact with the world based on Marcus Aurelius's description of his general Maximus. All right. So I'm going to start reading this. Maximus was my model for self-control, fixity of purpose, and cheerfulness under ill health and other misfortunes. His character was an admirable combination of dignity and charm, and all the duties of his station were performed quietly and without fuss. He gave everyone the conviction that he spoke as he believed and acted as he judged right. Bewilderment or timidity were unknown to him. He was never hasty, never dilatory. Nothing found him at a loss. He indulged neither in despondency nor forced gaiety, nor had he anger or jealousy any power over him. Kindliness, sympathy, and sincerity all contributed to give the impression of a rectitude that was innate rather than inculcated. Nobody was ever made by him to feel inferior, yet none could challenge his preeminence. He was also the possessor of an agreeable sense of humor. So Martin says, being well-balanced, cheerfulness, prudent, moderate, temperate, morally upright, dignified. Can everyone get a sense of that, of this man, what it would be like to have him as a leader? I think actually Russell Crowe in Gladiator played that extremely well. So then there's another, Stephen Pressfield, who's one of my favorite authors, has a book called The Virtues of War on Alexander the Great. And at Alexander's death, he has his scribe shares these words. It's kind of a, let's call it a historical fiction, but it's really well written. And so as I explain how the scribe sees Alexander, I want you to notice not just the character traits he had, but how those virtues impacted those around him. So he says, I found him the most kindly and knightly of men. He treated me, a youth, as a comrade and as a soldier, never condescending, always opening his heart, absent artifice. No one was less impressed than he with the scale of his triumphs. He stated in his journal that he wished only to be a soldier, that he was. He was superior to heat and cold, hunger and fatigue, and what is more, to greed and cupidity. Time and again, I watched him turn the choicest portions to his comrades. His bed was a camp cot. He dressed in moments, despising all adornment and superfluity. Winter and summer were the same to him. His idea of hell was absence of toil. He was more himself amid adversity and craved never ease, but hardship and danger. No man was more loved by his comrades or more feared by his enemies. He needed no speeches to fire the hearts of his fellows, though none excelled him as an orator, only to show himself before them. The sight of their king in arms rendered timid men brave and brave men prodigious. His years of campaign were not more than 13. Who has won what he has? Who shall ever again? So these are two that kind of like hit me in the core of like what it means to be a leader, what it means to be courageous, what it means to influence others with virtues. And that's not to say Alexander the Great didn't have some vices, because certainly he did, but you could tell if there was even half truth to the way this was written about him, that he impacted a lot of people, and which was the reason, these virtues were the reason that people followed him, that he was able to conquer the known world essentially at that time. So what is a virtue? I see virtues as habits. Well, so Aristotle says virtues as habits or dispositions that lead to good or fulfilling life, moral and ethically desirable characteristics, what he would call eudaimonia. And I think of a virtue as godliness, divine qualities that we all have inherent in us, that we are here on earth to develop and to strive for. And we're going to go over more of that in a moment. but they're these divine characteristics within. They're this ideal that we believe is good and right in our core. And the opposite of that is a vice, which is a negative or immoral behavior, habit, or characteristics that's considered harmful, immoral, and unethical. So we all may have different definitions of what virtues and vices are, but in the most part, I think we can agree that virtues are good and vices we think of as negative traits. But if we think about a virtue as coming from our higher self, our divine qualities within, we can think of a vice as coming from our ego. Virtues are always moving us towards selflessness, and vices are kind of the selfish, short-term actions we take for a short-term payoff that tend to be harmful in the end. So this is like kind of what our life is about, is this constant battle with doing the right thing. Do we do what's easy in the short term, or do we take the right actions in the long term to build the life that we want? Almost all virtues are this long term, doing the right thing now, which might not be the easiest. And it seems to me, you guys can convince me otherwise, that a vice is taking a short term action to get a short term payoff and a long term detriment. So when you have a smoking habit and you smoke a cigarette, you meet that need for a moment, and then you have a negative effect afterwards or in the long term. When you eat a piece of cake, right, you get that little sugar buzz, you meet that need, versus when you have a salad, over time, the salad is gonna lead you to a better life, and the cake is gonna lead you to self-judgment and regret and high blood pressure and all of these negative things. Even having a temper in the moment, getting angry is a way to control those around you, and that's a vice. But a virtue would be to be able to pause and to reflect and have self-awareness and make a conscious decision. Taking a weight loss pill versus working out. This is all of these are a comparison of virtues and vices, and I think it's cheating on your spouse or your partner in the short term versus the long term having fidelity and doing the right thing. Does everyone kind of get an idea of how important these are? All right, so I'm going to go over, I think, the story arc right now. So has anyone studied stories, like how stories work, hypnotic stories, how to influence with stories? Okay. So this frame is probably going to change how you tell stories and how you watch movies for the rest of your life. Now, because I believe we are here on earth to develop virtues, that's our story. And so any good story you hear is really about the hero developing virtues. So this hero starts off with life, going through normal life, and something happens. There's a setback, there's a decision, there's something that happens. Now they have to go through some challenges and some setbacks. And this is the hero's journey, right, Dakota? Those challenges and setbacks are really not about the goal. They're about this character developing virtues, right? They talk about the hero's two journeys. The first one is what they think is the goal, right, which is to build a business or to go slay the dragon. But the real journey, the second journey, is they're developing character traits, or what we're calling here virtues. And in this story, there's a villain. Well, hold on, let's go back to the hero. So the hero has virtues to begin with, virtues that we like. They might be kind, they might be compassionate, they might be ambitious. There's things that we resonate with, but they also have vices. And a hero's vices are vices that we tend to see in ourselves. So they might have the same struggles of doubts or insecurities. Maybe they have addictions, and we see them and we go, that's similar to me, even if we don't consciously realize it. But a villain also has vices, and they also have virtues. The difference is a villain's vices are things that we find repugnant and unforgivable. Does this resonate with everybody? So a villain will be cruel. When we see cruelty, there's never a story you watch where a hero's cruel, right? Like that doesn't happen unless they make a massive transformation. But the villain, they will have persistence and determination. They will have all kinds of traits. They'll have charisma. They'll have adaptability. They'll have all these virtues but we don't like them because their vices are repugnant to us. Where the hero's vices we tend to resonate with. So cruelty, manipulation, selfishness, these are the villain's vices. So you can observe, if you look at every story, every good story, movies these days don't really have this, but I don't think they're telling good stories. They're really just for a short-term dopamine addiction is what movies are these days. So we watch, let's take the Karate Kid, for example. Daniel, he's driven, he seems to be kind, but he's also got these vices, right? Like he's got a little bit of a temper. He flies off the handle. He's a little knee-jerk reaction to people. And he meets who? Who does he meet? Who's his trainer? Remember Mr. Miyagi? Has everyone seen the Karate Kid? So Mr. Miyagi is the mentor. And the mentor in every good story has the virtues that the character is aspiring to. So Mr. Miyagi has equanimity, right? He can keep a level head. Just like Maximus in Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, just like Alexander the Great, he has equanimity. He's got focus. He's got the right amount of kindness, determination. He also carries himself with some certainty. And, there's times where he has mercy, right? He can, at the end of the movie, he's got his hand up and he's going to strike the villain, and instead he honks his nose, right? He's got humor as well. He says some funny things. And so Mr. Miyagi tends to embody these traits that Daniel's son is working towards. So any great story, this mentor, and even in Pinocchio, there's Geppetto or Jiminy Cricket, his little cricket on his shoulder. All of these mentors are really teaching the hero to get vices. But the mentor is never the hero, because the story is not about being virtuous, it's about developing virtues. That's what keeps us attracted. We could see someone with virtues and it's kind of boring, right? But when we see someone struggle with their vices and overcome them and to become a virtuous person, we feel like we can do that. And I think this is why Freddie is so captivating, because he could take something that someone struggles with and in moments show them that he can overcome that vice. And I've done it as well, but it's fun to watch Freddie do it in moments, to have that turnaround. And we can watch someone before our eyes have a new trait, have a new behavior, have a new way of being, stop struggling with something that they've struggled with for a long time. All right, so I just gave you guys a lot. Let's take a moment and share. How does everybody feel about these stories? Does that resonate with you? Can you see in your own life? Maybe let's take a moment and write down in your own life what you've struggled with and what virtues have developed as a result of it. And if you struggle with something and you didn't develop a virtue as a result of it, my guess is you're probably still struggling with it. That's what all of our setbacks are about, is becoming more determined, more patient, having more equanimity, becoming more kind, becoming more authentic. And if we don't step into those challenges persist, because they're all about developing virtues. And actually, I would love if anybody wants to share about a challenge they overcame and what virtue resulted from it.
Can I just say something?
Absolutely, Freddie.
I think what you're saying about developing virtues, I'm thinking that we already have all of those virtues. We're born with all the virtues. Very few people are born cruel. Very few people are born angry. None of those things are we born with. And I think a lot of us develop what we'd call negative traits as a way of defense. We think if I'm kind to everybody, and it's true, I know myself, I know throughout my own life, many people, people who have worked for me, because I'm not someone who shouts and screams, they take kindness for weakness, and we know that happens. So there's a lot of things that we develop as a way of protection. It's not through an innate nastiness or unkindness. It's because we feel we need that protection. If I'm just kind and I'm giving to everybody, then And it's true, there are people that will just take from those people. So I'm thinking that we already have all the virtues we need. It's more about trusting ourselves. That's what's going through my mind. It's trusting ourselves and trusting that we already have those virtues, and it's what we can do without. You know, for many years I would consider it a really nasty side. You know, I could, and I felt that I needed that, because if I didn't have it, then there'd be situations where people would walk all over me. You know, I'm not a big man, you know, a physically big man, and yet I've never lost a street fight. And because I had that side of me, that when someone pushed me to that level, I had no compunction about what damage I could do. You know, some people be worried about breaking someone's arm or doing someone serious damage. Once I got to that point where someone had pushed me to the point of fighting, then it was kind of a thing came down where I had no compunction about what I did. And I didn't want to let that go for a long, long time, because I thought I needed that side of me. But the worst side of that was that would also come out in a relationship. I could be just cold, not physically, not physically, but I could be icy cold. If someone, you know, I would just be, that person I could have been madly in love with in 1 second, and the next thing it would just be like I'd be icy cold. And I felt I needed that. And it took a long time for me to kind of lock that side of me away. And what I'm saying is, I think it's more about what we let go of, and you know, accepting and allowing ourselves to be be those things that we are. I don't believe any of us are born unkind. I don't think that. I don't think anyone are born with those nasty traits. People develop them because of the life they had when they're growing up, and most of that's through protection. So what I'm saying to everyone here, you know, and I know pretty much everyone on here, and I've met a lot of you in person. I know all of you have those virtues. I know that, and I know that's why you come into this work. But with our clients, it's more about getting them to understand, I'll keep saying it, their own innate worth, to be able to trust that they are a good person for all the things that we do wrong in our life, to trust that for whatever that is, you know, we're innately good and we're innately kind, and then allowing ourselves to be that person. I'm kind of stumbling out how I'm trying to explain this here.
Oh, no, you could.
But you know, I hope you understand what I'm saying. It's more about what we let go of than trying to develop virtues.
Yes.
We know,
It's
you know,
not-
we've already have those virtues. It's more about not seeking them, but allowing ourselves to be it.
Mhm.
And I hope that's my kind of thinking on this. Does that make sense? I'm going to use Nick's thing. Does that make sense?
I love that. I don't disagree at all. I think it's two different frames of these traits are already in you. All you have to do is shed the ego and the vices and reveal them. And then the other frame is you're a soul that's actively developing them. And honestly, I don't know which one's more accurate. And I don't know that it matters as far as application goes, but it feels good to believe like these traits are already in you. And I believe they are, because we can recognize them in other people. So we know that they're already within us, right? Beautiful. Does anyone want to share a setback they had and a virtue that they developed as a result of it?
I'll go.
Diana?
Who is that?
Diana's got a hand up.
Oh yeah, Diana. Hi, Diana.
Hi, Nicholas. Great meeting, and I've missed coming here. I lost everything twice. I made a lot of money and lost all of it twice. Once when I was just going to retire, and had some rocky times after that. And I realized finally that I was missing appreciativeness, gratitude. Those were at the top of the list, and that I had a big job ahead of me to really develop those qualities. I I took that success way too much for granted. And now I'm appreciative about the smallest things.
Beautiful. I don't think our soul, our higher self, cares what car we drive, what kind of house we live in, cares how other people view our status. I think our soul and our higher selves care about developing those virtues like appreciation and like gratitude and like persistence and like patience and developing, uncovering, revealing, however you want to think about it. And so if you lose everything, I think your higher soul sometimes might celebrate it because it knows you're going to have some really good come from it if you're looking for it. But if you become a victim of that, you don't get to see the virtues.
Yeah, well put. Thank you.
You know,
Thanks for sharing.
we know that in our language, in hypnosis, the word try implies failure. You know, and I think if we're trying to be virtuous, you know, I think, you know, that's the wrong angle to come at it. You know, when my clients come to see me, I say, I've been trying to lose weight for years. I say, stop trying, just lose the weight. And I think it's like that with virtues. You know, stop trying to be virtuous and start being virtuous. Just start with the small things, you know, being kind to the person that's serving you in the greengrocers, you know, saying a kind word, doing something nice, being your best self. And rather than trying to be something, accepting you are already that, and then be it, as opposed to keep trying and striving for things. I think it's a real problem for most of us in our life. We spend our lives striving to get things, you know, to get a bigger house or a bigger car, and you know, or a better body or whatever it might be. And that's okay. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do those things. I'm not saying it's nice to have those things, but I'm saying if you start from the understanding you're already the most incredible creation. You're already, you know, you're already good enough. You're already a whole being. And then, yeah, you can have fun trying to get those things. We want our kids to go to the best colleges. We want to provide for our families, all those things, providing we don't lose ourselves in thinking that is who we are. You know, I think that's where people get lost. They get lost in the things. And I think start with the understanding you're already the most incredible creation. You're already, I've said it to you, and it's not even mine, it's Sandra's words, isn't it? You're already loved. You are loved and you are loving. There's the base of what we should be. And then from there we can go, okay, and a lot of what you're saying about, you know, vices and virtues are opinions. You know, they're society opinions. We know in our heart when we're being our best selves. We know in our heart when we're not being kind. We know in our heart when we're being cruel or we're not being honest. So I think it has to start with that feeling of trust. Trust yourself. It's hard for me because I know most of you here, and I've met a lot of you in person, and it's kind of frustrating for me when I'm with you, and I just think I wish you could believe what I believe about you. I wish you could see what I see. That's what I want for you, you know. But it's all the other stuff that puts placed on us, and relationships and things that are said to us and all of those things. But once we go, okay, that was just placed on me. It was never me in the first place. You know, I've done it a few times for you. I've taken you back to being a month old, when all you wanted was to be loved and held and fed and protected. You know, when you're the pure intelligence, the light and love that you are when you come into this world, before the world gets to you. And the truth of the matter is, whatever's happened to you throughout your life, you are still, the core of your being is still that pure intelligence, light and love. And anything that's not that, it was learned. And they're the things you have to let go of to get to that point of being, for want of a better word, your virtuous self, your kind, generous, loving, you know, fearless self. And that's what, you know, you're talking about in Marcus Aurelius. I'm reading the same book, strange enough. And I know, you know, there's a lot of women here, but one of the things he said, I know he was, you know, he was writing it, you know, thousands of years ago. But what resonated with me, and I'm hoping it'll resonate with everybody else, even the women here, he said it's one of the virtues was manliness. You know, being manly. I know I'm looking at Tom, I'm looking at Martin here. You know, I'm looking at men on here, and I'm not saying macho. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying manly. And I think that in what encapsulates in that word manly is all of the virtues you're talking about. You know, kindness and strength and humor and protection, all of those things that I would wrap in that what I consider to be manly. I hope I'm making sense here, you know, and I'm hoping that, you know, the women here would recognize that in a male, you know, a manliness, which is kind of a protective, kind, loving, you know, where we take that position of protection, you know, because of our physical being. You know, I hope that kind of makes sense. But when I read that from Marcus Aurelius, that came across, and I'd hope that I am manly, not macho, not, you know, over masculine, not alpha male, but manly. And in that word manly, I think it encapsulates those virtues you're talking about. So, you know, I'm rambling a bit here, but, you know, this is kind of stirred up in me what I think is super important, which is what you're teaching us today, Nick. So I hope that kind of makes sense to everybody.
Well, even the word virtue was initially really to describe manly virtues of courage and valor and selflessness, and so that was, and it kind of expanded to be more, you know, morally and ethically include all the other virtues as well. But it was kind of meant, and initially the etymology of the word came from those, I guess, battle-worthy virtues.
Yeah, I have been lucky enough, and I am lucky enough to know some incredible women. You know what I mean? Incredible in that state. Patty and Blind and Doreen and Andrea. You know, what I consider to be super strong women that stand on their own. That you know, they make their path, they live their path. You know, and it's the same strength in a different form. I'm not saying that man, you know, I'm not getting this cross clearly. When I say manly, I mean the masculine. But that's not to take away from the strength that women have. It's just different. It's almost more power. But recognizing that you have that and then living it and, you know, and embodying it and understanding you already have that. You don't need to go and try and get it. It's more about what we let go of than what we're striving to get, if you understand. It's the same with us. It's the same with our material things. It's lovely to have them, but recognize that is not who you are. You know, and once we get to that point, then yeah, you know, in that book of Michael Neal's, where he's, you know, How to Be Happy Now, he said if you're now, what does he say? If you're doing things in order to be happy, you're doing them in a wrong order. Find what you can be happy about now. That doesn't stop you working towards getting that nice car, or working towards that nice house, or working towards having the best body you can have. But your happiness no longer depends upon it. And I think it's the same when it comes to virtues. You know, if you're doing things in order to be virtuous, kind of doing them in a wrong order. Find what virtues you already have, and you already have them, and then start acting upon those rather than looking outside to try and get them. I hope I'm kind of making sense here, but that's how I see what we're working towards here. I always start with my clients, and I look at them, and I know what they're capable of. You know, I have no doubt in my mind. I've seen it enough times, and that's maybe why I'm effective. I don't know, because I already trust my client. Already knows what they need to do. They already have all the resources to make it happen. They just don't know it.
Right.
And I think it's the same when it comes to our virtues. You're already virtuous. You're born with those virtues of kindness and love and generosity. Somewhere way along the line, you know, they get knocked out of you, or you feel you have to grow an armor around you of you know, whatever it might be to protect you. But once we get past that and back to our core selves, then we realize we're already those things. We just have to allow ourselves to be it and show it. It's just kind of my way of thinking on this. And I hope that helps some of you. Probably confused you completely now, but you know, that's my thinking on this. You're already the most incredible creation.
So I think we had I heard a male voice that was going to share on an adversity turned into a virtue. I didn't know who that was, if somebody wants to step up again. Maybe
That
I
was
hearing-
me.
Oh,
That was
okay,
me.
good.
So my wife has a condition called PMDD, and through that, it helped me become way more patient. I say has, hypnotherapy actually removed it, so she doesn't have it anymore. But having it for 13 years, not knowing what was going on, and just becoming more and more patient as we went through it, not knowing that it was PMDD at the time.
Have you managed to take that into all areas of your life, Dakota?
Patience,
Yeah,
I would say so. Yeah.
good, brilliant.
Good. So thanks for sharing, Dakota. I'm going to go over kind of a speed round of different virtues. And we're going to go through them. And I want you to kind of, as I do this, reflect on them and see them in your life and in yourself and how you already have them. And you may even think about people that you look up to and how they embody these virtues as well. And so here's something to consider is we all think about them differently. I may say kindness and you may think compassion. So I'm not going to use kindness and compassion as two separate virtues. They're going to be similar. So there's some that's going to have a little overlap, or they may be 2 or 3 words I kind of tie together. But again, these are based on my perceptions, and yours might be a little different. So I'm gonna go through these, and the first thing I'm gonna start with is the virtue, because I believe this is a meta virtue that affects all the other virtues, is balance. And most of us probably don't think of the word balance when we think of virtues, but Stephen Pressfield in that same book, The Virtues of War, says that any virtue taken to an extreme becomes a vice. And so as we go through these virtues, we're going to go over how if you're too much of that virtue, you actually go too far in the other direction. You go too far. And so you can be disciplined, but if you're too disciplined, you lack adaptability, you lack creativity. And so they all have these balance. And I believe the Tao Te Ching and Taoism, when it talks about the middle path, is talking about the perfect balance of these virtues for you. And they're going to be different for everybody. So if you look at a Jocko Willink and why am I blanking on his name? The Navy SEAL guys, like their virtue that they embody, that they're here to really show people, is discipline. But for someone that's a creative artist that maybe only paints when inspiration strikes them, their life would be out of balance if they had too much discipline. But the level that you need and the level that I need are going to be different. And when you realize this, you can look at someone and you can release judgment for them, because we're all finding our own perfect balance of this, our own middle path. Does that make sense? Does this resonate? And I'll go over some more examples as we go through this. Okay, so honor, we think about, like in the military, they talk a lot about honor. Honor is just a code of virtues. So the Bushido, the samurai, they have these lists. Well, those are just virtues. Here's the virtues that are important to us. So that's what honor is. So if you think of honor's not really a virtue, but it's a code of virtues. Patience, again, almost all vices come from impatience, or they're a result of impatience. When we're patient, we do the right things that lead to a more positive long-term result. And so having patience helps us with all of the other virtues. And I think Dakota, as Dakota mentioned, as we go through challenges in life, and we realize things don't always happen as fast as we want, right? Like when we're a kid, we want to eat that marshmallow now. But when we can become patient and we let our investments grow and we let our relationships grow and we do things with a long-term focus, the patience really pays off. And then Freddie's talked about this a lot, but he hasn't used this word, but maybe he has, but authenticity and sincerity and honesty are all, I'm kind of going to say authenticity to wrap all those virtues in. But when you're true to yourself, you're living that middle path of those virtues. You're not changing who you are for somebody else. You can remain, to thine own self be true. And so when you're living that, you're living the virtues that are already inside of you. And if you think about where in your life are you showing up inauthentically? Where in your life are you saying, are you people pleasing? Are you not speaking up to what you truly desire, what you truly value, what you truly believe in? And I would bet that all of that would lead to vices if you're not being authentic to your true self. Would you trust a leader who is not authentic to themselves? I'm listening to Jocko Willink's book on leadership, and he talks about you have to be authentic even about your weaknesses, because if you try to hide your weaknesses, your team is going to poke holes in it, and it's going to make it more aware, and then you're going to have to try even harder to hide it. When you're authentic about it, it's almost endearing to people. They trust you more. And then they know that it's okay for them to have vulnerabilities as well. So vulnerability could be another virtue wrapped into authenticity. Humility. I think humility is what allows us to kind of channel and download creative inspiration. It allows us to have more of all the other virtues, because if you have pride and you think you've already made it, there's no room for you to reveal your other virtues, to become that better version of yourself, or to realize it, or to bring it in from without. And so I think, if we think about an arrogant leader who takes all the credit versus one who's humble and gives the credit to his team, who would you rather follow? So I think that's what humility does. And then I think all of these are also tied in with selflessness and generosity. The heroes in the stories that we really like, they're always doing something for their tribe, for their community. They're sacrificing themselves in some way, while the villain is always selfish. They're always taking what's good for them. They'll screw over their closest compadres to get more. And so that's a vice. So selflessness and generosity. And as he described Alexander the Great in The Virtues of War, he talked about, and throughout the book, it's a really good book, he talks about Alexander always offering the gold, the spoils of war, everything he could, the positions of honor, the praise, giving everything he could to his generals and his troops, and handwriting notes to his troops, and sending bottles of wine to heroes from the battle, because he was just generous like that. He took nothing for himself. And then another important one is equanimity. And that showed up in Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, and it showed up in the Virtues of War as well. And that's having that level-headed, treating everything the same, approaching everything the same. Freddie talked about Rudyard Kipling in the poem If. Is everyone familiar with that? If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same, that whole poem is about equanimity. Having that level-headed, not getting too full on yourself when you're succeeding or beating yourself up when you're too low. All right, a couple more. And again, this is definitely not an exhaustive list, but as I'm saying these, I want you to start to pick out which ones you would like to use for the hypnosis process that's coming up. So if anything pops out to you that you would like to embody and feel more, keep that in mind. Intelligence is a virtue, and I believe intelligence is really just the ability to recognize patterns. When you can see patterns in the market, patterns in your clients, patterns in your own life, patterns in the weather and the seasons and in animal movements, that's what intelligence is. And when you're intelligent, you then can be adaptable. The flip side, if you're too persistent or too disciplined, or you have too much certainty, you don't adapt enough. I've done this with buying rental properties. I wasn't paying attention to what was happening, but I was persistent and disciplined in my vision. and I didn't adapt to the information that was coming to me in the right way. So we got to have the right balance of these. And discipline obviously is a virtue that comes up in a lot of ways, because I think it's consistent execution towards a worthy ideal. Consistent execution towards a worthy ideal. And if anyone here is familiar with Chase Hughes, he talks about discipline as you selflessly serving your future self, which again would tie into patience as well. So a lot of these tie in together. Consistent execution towards a worthy ideal and selfless service to your future self. All right, a few more, and then we'll do a little bit of a hypnosis process here. Decisiveness. If you've read Think and Grow Rich, you know that leaders decide quickly and they change their mind slowly, if ever. You must enjoy making decisions. We follow someone with the most certainty who's a decision maker, someone who knows what's going on and is glad to make decisions. And so certainty is another virtue that ties into decisiveness. When you carry yourself with certainty, people follow you. Preparation, or what you might think of as prudence. Boy Scouts are always prepared for everything. Freddie and I and a few others of you here speak at Hypno Thoughts, and it's generally pretty obvious when you get into a room and someone hasn't prepared. Have you ever seen a speaker that's not prepared and they're fumbling through their notes and what's your experience like? Versus someone who's in there, they've prepared so much, they're confident, they're relaxed, they're charismatic, they've seen everything the audience is going to throw at them, they adapt to it. Preparation is a necessary skill, a necessary virtue for success. Organization, orderliness, cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness, right? And there's a book by, what's his name? Dr. John DeMartini. It was his 9 Steps to Financial Freedom or something. And there was one insight in there that I took away that was really good. Money flows to the system with the highest level of organization. So if your finances are organized, you've got a budget, your investments are categorized well, and you're tracking them, that system that's got a high level of organization is going to attract more money. But if you think of someone who doesn't know where they're spending it, they're not tracking it, they're just throwing their money at things, maybe they're gambling, they're not allocating resources in a thoughtful way, that lack of organization, money will flee that system. Does this make sense to everybody? Or is everybody picking out things that they want to work on, or getting ideas of how they can kind of see the world through these lenses? Integrity was mentioned a couple times in the comments, and integrity is really just doing what you say you're going to do. And we talked about that a few weeks ago. Leaders do what they say they're going to do. If a leader comes in and they say they're going to do something and they don't do it, you may give them a pass once, you may give them a pass twice, but after a while, you're not going to trust them and you're not going to follow that person. And then 2 more. Excellence is a commitment to a high standard. We study, we practice, we learn from the best in the world, we model successful people. We hold the people around us to a high standard. We hold ourselves to a high standard. That's what excellence is. And last, I think Freddie is an example to this for all of us, is humor and playfulness. Having a cheerful and playful spirit enlivens everyone around you. Playfulness is the best and the fastest way to learn anything, and it's a great virtue as well. And so it's having this balance of like being playful and also being disciplined, having certainty, but also having curiosity. And if you go too much in one direction, it's a detriment to your life. And only you can assess that for you, if you're living in your authentic self in that level of balance. So that's my talk on virtues, and I want to do a little virtue exposing, virtue building hypnosis here for you to rehearse and step into. Does anyone have any comments or questions before we do that? Does everyone know what virtue they would like to work on? Couple head nods here. Three. Okay, good. I don't know if I mentioned kindness and compassion, but that should be in there as well. The ability to be kind to others. All right, so what we're going to do here is a little hypnosis process. I'm going to have you pick your virtues, find times in your life when you lived and exhibited that virtue. I want you to see it. I want to prove to you that it's already within you. I want you to think of people in your life that you can model, and maybe not in your life, maybe they're celebrities or athletes, whatever. And I want you to see, what does it mean for them to embody that virtue? How do they live it? How does it affect their life? And I want you to identify exactly what that virtue means to you. And then you're gonna see yourself living in the authentic balance of having that virtue. You're gonna notice how you go through the world. You're gonna step into that self. You're gonna feel what it feels like. And then we're gonna experience that. How does that sound? Good. I think if I got everything. All right, so let's get comfortable. This shouldn't take too long. Do a little virtue installation here. And as you get comfortable, maybe begin by reflecting on some of your favorite stories, the heroes in those stories, and how that hero developed, and how through persistence and dedication and intention, they drew out those virtues from within themselves to become a hero, to accomplish something great. And just notice what stories come to mind as you close your eyes and get comfortable. Preparing for your own hero's journey. And I want your subconscious mind to generate an intention for what virtue you would like to experience. And it may be different than the one you consciously chose, or it may be the same. And allow that virtue to come to mind and set an intention now to be more of that. To experience that in your life. And maybe you see that word written out in your mind. You see the letters, and you notice what color it is. And take a moment and let those letters fade and see revealed before you times in your life when you lived and embodied that virtue. When you authentically carried yourself that way. When that character trait was revealed in your life. And you may see several memories of this. Times when you lived and embodied this virtue. And notice how good it felt. Remember what happened. And as you notice that virtue already within you, think of people in your life that embody this virtue. Knowing that your ability to recognize it within them is only because it's already within you. Maybe someone that had great kindness or discipline, persistence or patience. Someone that was decisive or had integrity. And see them with that virtue that you're focusing on. And how specifically do you know that they have this virtue? What tells you? Maybe it's how they carry themselves, how they treat others, how they execute on their plans, the look in their eye, the way they speak. But notice what specifically this virtue means. And see yourself. What would your life be like if you were the perfect example of having this virtue in the right authentic balance for you? If this virtue was true to you and you lived it in a way that was honest and sincere, what would your life be like? If you could watch yourself live with this virtue, embodying this virtue, how do others treat you? How do you treat others? What's different about you and about your life now that you embody this virtue? What does it look like? What do people say to you when you live as an example to them? There's no need to preach to them about this virtue. You just live it, and your example influences them. What would they say to you? And get a really clear picture of you living and embodying this virtue. Because in a moment, you're going to step into it and feel it and merge with it. And as you observe yourself, notice that virtue, the frequency of that virtue around you like an energy field, vibrating at a specific frequency, maybe a specific color. And in a moment, you're going to step in. And you're going to feel that frequency of this virtue and that color resonating through every cell in your body, through your fingertips, all the muscles in your face, your brain, your heart, your very core, filled with this energy. And go ahead and step into this frequency and feel it flowing through every part of you. Noticing that you feel more like your true self, like more like your authentic self. As this virtue grows inside you, the frequency tunes into every cell. You may notice the different feelings in your body. You may notice a feeling of more freedom, more resolve, more self-awareness now. And as it moves from your fingertips to your toes, through all of your bones, your muscles, your fibers, your tendons, every part of you, you think to yourself, I am virtuous, I am disciplined, I am kind, I am orderly, I am persistent. Whatever your virtue is, say that over and over and feel it in every cell of your being. As you command those cells, and imagine taking a look in a mirror and seeing yourself now and noticing what's different. And noticing the positive changes that have already taken place. And you can try to go back to that old version of you, but notice what happens instead. Notice how good this feels, how much you feel like you're at home. Your new home. And knowing that this was inside you all along. And finally, thinking of the future, think of 3 ways that your life is different because of this virtue. How does this virtue manifest in your life? Maybe you have different habits, different wake-up time, different eating. Maybe you treat people differently. You take different actions in your business. What 3 changes result from you living authentically with this new virtue? And knowing that you carry this with you, and knowing that all of the virtues are within you, ready to be brought out at any time, you get to continue this hero's journey of discovery, of joy, with this entire group every week. And when that virtue fills every part of you, and you're ready to come back into your new future, into the call, take a moment and begin to feel into your body again. In a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 5. At 5, your eyes will open with a new sense of certainty, a new sense of resolve, and this new virtue. 1, feeling grateful for these calls together. 2, feeling grateful for your investment in yourself every week. 3, to live a more authentic and true life. 4, moving your fingers and toes, coming back into your body. And 5, eyes opening, feeling great, wide awake. Who would like to share? Samantha, yes.
Yeah, so I noticed that my unconscious mind just communicates now in metaphors for me and very simple words. And the word surrender came to me. And then I had ice cubes on the back of my neck. And then I was drinking a hot tea with cinnamon. And it was really strange. I just noticed a lot of interesting things. I was like plucking little hairs off my face. So I'm looking forward to the surrender. Wonder what all that means. but I'll keep you posted.
Good. Thank you for sharing.
You seem to
Anyone
be in a peaceful place, Samantha. Even from the last time I've spoken to you, you seem to be in a much more peaceful, maybe self-accepting, maybe surrendering to what is. Maybe recognizing what I've recognized in you when we've met and when we've spoken. Hopefully, you're recognizing that and surrendering to that calm inner strength you have, other than always focusing on your outer strength. So I'm pleased for you.
Thanks. Yeah, I changed the way that I think. Not
Yeah.
my mind, but the way that I think.
Yeah,
I
good.
had to do some thinking changes. Thanks.
Yeah.
Noticing. I feel good.
Good. So pleased.
Yeah, your tone of voice seems even more peaceful and a little slower and a little different. So, all right, anybody else? Did anyone have a different virtue that came up than they were intentionally planning for?
Diana?
Yes, I did have a different one. What came to my mind was discernment. Everybody says, well, all the families say I believe everybody and in everybody too much. But I don't think that's a bad thing. But by the same token, you can be taken advantage of an awful lot. So discernment came to my mind. Oh, I didn't expect that.
I
Yeah, I
love
think it's a much more peaceful place to be when you trust. It's a peaceful place to be when you trust people.
It is.
And people will say, well, that's foolish to trust everybody. Some years ago, I bought a business in South London, and I was only like 27, and I had 5 guys working for me, all under the age of 25, and it was a cash business. So there was a lot of cash around. And a friend of mine who, he was very smart, and he had earned a lot of money. He'd already made millions himself. And he came in, because he was a friend, and he looked at my business. He said, look, he says, great business, but don't trust anybody in here. He said, you can't trust them. Cash about, do not trust any of them. And I was a bit naive. I was 27. And I said, look, Ray, look, you don't trust anybody. And he had his own business. And I said, you don't trust anybody. I said, every now and again, someone proves you right. I said, I trust everybody. Every now and again, someone proves me wrong. I said, the only difference is I sleep every night. And that's my kind of thinking on it. And, it depends how you go about your life. Of course, people are going to turn you over and people are going to take kindness for weakness. But should that make you lose your own self and your own authentic self and try and be something you're not? I'm not saying being naive or foolish. I'm saying, live in that space you're living in, Diana, is a much better space than living your life waiting to be done over, waiting for someone to.
Yeah, I couldn't stand that. I couldn't think like that.
No, and why should you? You've got this far in your life, living like you're living. As I said, for me, I start from that position of trust, and every now and again I get proved wrong. I'm kind to everyone. Every now and again, someone takes that as a weakness.
Well, they do, but that's inevitable, I suppose. But it shouldn't change
I
your
sleep
thinking,
every
I
night.
don't
That's
think.
the only difference. I sleep every night. I'm not laying there wondering who's going to turn me over all the time. It's just not who I am, and like you, I've got this far, Diana. I don't know how much further I've got to go, but I've got this far living like that. So
Yeah,
I
me
understand
too.
where you're going. Good.
Thank you.
Thanks for the share, Diana. All right,
Okay.
Carmen, I see your hand up there.
Yeah, so I started out wanting to work on equanimity, and what just kept blaring in my head was decisiveness. And as we worked through the hypnosis, the things that came up for me were, if I were decisive, then I'd be authentically, I'd be confidently authentic, you know, and I would also be disciplined and I would know myself better. Um, and I'd have this fixity of purpose. I'd be persistent and steadfast, and I'd be resolute in not, you know, just in the decisions that I make, but in who I am and how I want to be in the world. Um, and I think from that place, I could be, I can possess more equanimity. I think when we're always contorting ourselves to fit a situation or to second guess a situation, it creates a great deal of stress. And when we're under stress and we're not being ourselves, we're unhappy and you know, anyway, that's what I started out wanting, the equanimity and the decisiveness came
That's
about. And when I embodied that decisiveness, can you feel a virtue? Well, I felt the virtue of decisiveness, and my whole my posture changed, and my physical stance changed, and I just felt it throughout my whole body. So there we go. That's what I wanted to share.
beautiful.
I think again, decisiveness, you know, the core part of that is self-trust, because most of the times when we're not decisive is when we're second guessing the decisions we make. And I think that comes from lack of trust in ourselves. Yeah, and it's probably not even lacking, it's not even ours. It's where in the past people have trying to make us doubt ourselves. And then we you know, we end up doubting, becoming part of who we are. We end up doubting ourselves because others have doubted us. I think being decisive starts once again with having some trust in yourself. And if you're living from that space of authenticity and you're coming from that space, then when you make a decision, rightly or wrongly, it's just a decision. And it's not the end of the world if you because it's not carved in stone. You can say, okay, I made that decision. Maybe I can, you know, and if it's not, doesn't work out, change the decision. None of it's carved in stone. It's like, you know, most of the things that we're stuck with as human beings, if we say, well, I made a decision when I was 7 that this is right, or I made a decision when I was 14 that I should do this. What I've said, and we've run it with you before, the blink and delete technique, that it just does that. We can look at any decision we made in our life from where we are now, because we're always evolving, and saying, now that I've evolved, is that decision I made any longer viable, or is it a decision I made in a less informed state? And if it's no longer viable, you know, blink twice, delete that decision, make a new decision. We don't have to keep living with decisions we made when we were 16 or 15 or 7 or 5, just because we made that decision. I had a client. It was a very, very sad case. He'd been a policeman and he'd retired. And then he decided he'd retired too early. And he was stuck with the, you know, because he wasn't earning as much money as he should do. And he felt it was the wrong decision. And he came to see me. His wife insisted on him coming to see me. And he sat there, everything I said to him, and this is the most frustrating client I've ever had. I said, whatever I said, he'd say it was the decision. That's all he kept saying. And he said that at home all the time. Whenever his wife said, look, we can do this, we can do that, he'd say, it was the decision. It was the decision. He just would not let go of that at all. And, you know, to the point where he's kind of, you know, a psychiatric case, to be honest with you. It was beyond what I could do because he was so ingrained with the stuck with that decision. What I'm saying to all of you is we can look at any decision we made, whether it's an hour ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago, and go, look at it from where we are. I honestly believe that as human beings, we're only ever making the best decision we can in any situation, but we're only making that decision with the information we have at that moment in time. And when we're 13 and when we're 15 and 7, we don't have all the information, but we're still making decisions, but we don't have to live at those decisions because we're evolving and we can look at them and go, right, now I've made that decision. Is it any longer viable? No. Then blink twice, delete it, make a new decision. This is how we upgrade our brain all the time and how we evolve. So I think not being decisive comes from lack of self-trust. Trust that you already know what you want, and you know you've got everything you need to make those decisions, and then make a decision, knowing that, okay, you can look at it in a month's time or a week's time and go, okay, maybe I can readjust that decision. That's my thinking on this. And it all starts, all of our virtues, my thinking, it starts with self-trust and self-love. That's where it starts from. Understanding, and I'm saying it to all of you here, you're already the most incredible creation. You're already a whole being. You're already good enough. And if you start from that and go, okay, Freddie says I'm good enough. You know, anyone says, you know, you could do, no, Freddie says I can. Freddie says I'm good enough. You know, and just live from that space, and then your life changes, honestly. We don't have to be anything we don't want to be. And once we get to that point.
Beautiful. I always believe that people that struggle to make decisions had a parent that either made all the decisions for them or overly corrected or scolded their decision making, and they couldn't do anything right, so they just decided unconsciously to stop making decisions. So if you're a parent, you have children, encourage your children to make decisions and let them live with the consequences of them. You know, you're not going to let a 6-year-old decide where they want to go to college or things like that, but say, you know, why don't you make a decision here? Why don't you decide? And then you know that you're going to have to live with these consequences in a way that you're guiding them, but allow them and build that decisiveness within them and give them suggestions that they're decisive. Yes, Andrea.
Yeah, I've got to echo that, because the amount of meetings I've been in with grown men that cannot make a decision on a multi-million-pound project, and it goes round and round in circles. It's like, for God's sake, one of you, please just decide what you're doing. And it's because they weren't given the basic safety.
And for you men, indecisiveness is not a trait that women admire. When you can be decisive with your values and where you're going and your purpose, it is something that women tend to like. So they might not tell you that, but they will show it in their behavior. So great. Thank you for sharing, Andrea. Anyone else? And if we have time, Freddie, do you want to do a process?
I think it's all done, Nick. I think they're processed out. I think I've been talking too much anyway. But I think, you know, it's been a great session. I hope everyone's got something from it. But just more than anything else, recognize you're already the most incredible creation. You are love, and you are loved, and you are loving. Come from that point. You know, to go through what he went through with his wife, to recognize that he already had that patience in him. He already had that virtue in him. You know, I'm so pleased for Dakota. I'm so pleased for his wife. And I'm so pleased for the people in his life now. You know, same with Samantha, to find that, you know, and, you know, just recognize and believe what I believe about you. That's all I want for you. You know, then you recognize you can just be who you want to be. Be yourself. You're already good enough. Don't have to try and be anything else. So, and then if you come from that space, then you can say, okay, yeah, I'd like to have that, or I'd like to have that. I'd like to be able, you know, to achieve that. But do it from that place of self-trust and self-love and self-belief. And then everything else is then a bonus. You know, that's how I see everything. Everything I get is a bonus. You already got your core foundation where you can be yourself and be kind and be loving and all that stuff. And then go, okay, it'll be fun to see how much money I can earn. It'd be fun to see if I can create that business I want. You know, in Samantha's case, see if I can create the body that I want, or whatever it might be that you're striving towards. But it's not your happiness, and your happiness is no longer dependent on getting those things. You already found that space of happiness. Then all the other stuff is just like, you know, icing on the cake, if you like. If that makes sense. I can't keep saying it now, Nick. You know, does that make sense to you?
I suggested that.
Yeah, I'm stuck with it. You know, I walk around.
I do that when you're all in semi-trances.
It's say to my kids, you know, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense to you? To my wife, does that make sense to you? But, you know, as I've mentioned my wife, she said something to me the other day, and I because we're talking about virtues, and I think it's the nicest thing she's ever said to me. We were talking about, my kids and the way people are in life now, and she said, "You're a gentleman," and I think she meant that in the true sense of the word. I like to think of myself as a gentleman, and not in a sense of not being weak, but being gentle, being a gentleman. And I think that was, for me, was the kind of nicest thing she said to me. So, I know you're all gentle people, and, I think you're all fabulous. I mean it, seriously.
Well, Freddie, we're all here because you have this generosity and selflessness with people, and this curiosity to get to know them, and a playful sense of humor, and it's all virtues, right? Like, we're not here for his looks or his money. Well, maybe his looks, but we're here because we relate to you because of those virtues, and you all have those virtues within you. It's this, again, I'll leave with this last point. It's the hero's two journeys. We're all like, oh, I want to achieve this goal and drive this car and get this money, but it's who you're becoming in the process, who you're developing into. And when you look at your life through the filter of every setback, every failure, every challenge is really just to allow you to develop virtues, then you don't struggle with it. You don't judge it. It's like you can look for that and find it. And in the Bible, there's a verse that says, consider it pure joy when you're going through trials of any kind, something like that. And with the idea that those trials are developing you into that true hero. So I hope that helps some of you, and I'm confident you are going to live that virtue that you've selected more and more every single day. And there may be a moment this week, I can't know when you realize it's just who you are. And you may hear somebody comment on that change, and you may realize that you imagined and you rehearsed that change taking place on this call. And you may think, wow, how incredible that I can use my imagination to change my life.
Can I just share something with you? When I was going through that thing in the hospital the other day, after I'd had this procedure done, a guy came out with an ultrasound, and I could see the TV that he was watching, my heart, and he could see the electrical pulse in my heart. And I've never seen that before. I've never actually seen the electricity in my heart. And I said, how incredible is that? And where does that electricity come from? What's creating that electric pulse that you can see? It's phenomenal, isn't it? And, that lady was speaking earlier about decision making. She talked about when she's reacting to situations and making decisions. And it kind of made me remember that thing that I was talking about the other week, where if you look at ourselves as, obviously there's the physical form, but we know we have an energy field around us. They can measure it now. I mean, Marina Costina's got one that can actually picture your aura around you. And so if you look at yourself as a whole being, then part of that wholeness, that 100%ness, is the energy field. And when you're reacting to a situation, it's drawing on that energy field. So the energy around you is shrinking, which makes you more matter than energy. So you're talking about balance. And so the balance between your energetic self and your physical being is out of balance when you're reacting to situations. But what they also said was that when you're living in the moment, which is what you're talking about, living in the moment, your authentic self, and being who you are and accepting who you are and living in the moment with an open heart, you increase the magnetic energy around you. And so when you think about animal magnetism and charisma, I believe that's what that is. If you know people who are charismatic, people that walk in a room and the energy changes and, people are drawn to them, they're people who have no side. There's no agenda. They're just living themselves, and they're living with that open heart. And I would say to all of you, if you're thinking about creating your business, or you know, whatever it is you want to draw into your life, whether it's finances, whether it's a relationship, whether it's, you know, health, whatever it might be, if you're living in the moment, being your authentic self with an open heart, you're going to increase that magnetic field around you. And that is going to draw to you what you're focused on. And again, it's about focusing on the positive, what you want, as opposed to what you don't want in your life. And I honestly think if you can, it takes training to bring yourself back, because there's things going on all the time around you to draw your attention and draw your energy. But you can keep bringing yourself back to the moment, wanting the best for everyone. That's how I kind of visualize having an open heart, wanting the best for everybody. And then you'll find that honestly, your life will change. See what happens this week if you just practice doing that for a week, and see what happens. Let us know next time we meet you. But yeah, here endeth the lesson. All right, I'm so pleased I'm here. I'm so pleased that all of you, I get to see you again this week.
So are we, Freddie.
And thanks, you know, again, thanks for all your love, all your kindness, and thank Nick for guiding you all through that, you know, that energy healing. I have no doubt, and I'm not just saying, I have no doubt that that made a massive difference to how quickly I recovered. I mean, even the people in the hospital thought it was kind of miraculous. You know, they see me 1 minute there on the slab, and the next minute, you know, back to normal. In fact, even better. So it's pretty amazing. So thanks again for all of that. It's lovely to see you.
Great to see you back, Freddie.
Thanks, Diana. And thanks, Nick. It was great this evening. And you got your dad here, you know, and I have no doubt that, you know, I don't know your dad like I know you, but knowing you, I have no doubt that your dad is, you know, is all the things we were talking about earlier that we were reading about in Marcus Aurelius. And yeah, I'm so pleased to know you. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's been
Thank you
a
both.
Okay, take care. Have a
Bye.
beautiful week. Good to see you again.
You too.
Thank you,
Bye.
Nick.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye
you,
now.
Freddie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Looking forward to next
Thank
week.
you.
Thank
you. Again.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Good weekend, everybody.
Yes, have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Bye, Blaine. Bye, Linda. Bye, Nolene.
Bye.
Good to see you, Doreen.
See you
See you
Sunday.
later.
Martin.
See ya.
Anybody
Bye now.
coming Sunday? Be nice.
Bye now.
Bye.